Hi guys, I'm Jesse. I'm an addict. Our speaker is the longest relationship I've had in recovery. We come in right around the same time. To be honest, he's one of the toughest relationships I've had, but the closest friend I have. And, I've seen him stay clean through many trials in his recovery, and I've seen him help me through a lot of mine. And somebody I respect a great deal and a good friend. It's Matt B.
Everyone, I'm an addict named Matt. Yeah, it's good to be here. This is one of my favorite events throughout the year. I get a lot of peace and serenity, and I get a real good recharge to get me through my life and the trials that I do face. And it seems like so far this year has been a lot, but looking back at everything, my recovery's been a real adventure, real journey, and sometimes it just seems like there's one thing after another. And the last month or so, I really got into this funk, this bout of depression or whatever, and I'm glad I'm feeling better about myself today. But life still shows up. And to be honest, right now I'm feeling kind of real insecure, real shaken, and a lot of doubt. And I got a call that I lost my job today on the way here, which was real cool. And then I turned into a fugitive because I have a company vehicle, and it was real exciting. Yeah, and I don't know if they thought I stole it or what. It just really got. I was kind of hurt, to tell you the truth. That these people that I've known for so many years and worked with, would resort to some of the tactics they did. And kind of freaked me out. And it was funny because my first reaction was I really didn't want anything to happen to this campground or to Narcotics Anonymous, and that was my main concern. I had some vengeful thoughts and some pretty street level mentality running through my head for a minute, but it's all going to be all right. I finally picked up the phone, and I'm going to turn the van in Tuesday. They're not going to come here and hog tie me and take me away. So yeah, that was my day. And I'm just going to deal with it as I can, hopefully put it out of my mind long enough this weekend to do what I need to do to get what I need to get me through. My experience has shown that, when there's more things going on in my life, I have to do more. Which as an addict kind of sucks. I'm inherently lazy, and I've come to the realization that I live most of my life to the best of my willingness, not to the best of my ability. And if I did live my life to the best of my ability, most of the stuff wouldn't really faze me, because when I'm good with God and I'm doing what I need to do, you really can't touch me. And I say that from experience because there's been times where when things have come up, it's just been like, it's no big deal. It's just another thing, and I know what to do, and I got to do it, and I have some trust and some faith. And sometimes when I get knocked around a little bit, self-esteem, self-worth, and all that self-centered fear kicks in, and I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. I don't feel comfortable around any of you people, the people that I need to save my life every day. I really can't stand and don't want to be around. And I know that's not the truth. It's just my perception of reality. It's not reality. So I do what I have to do sometimes, I'll just tell you a little about myself. I know through this process that, if an addict doesn't understand and deal with why they use, they won't stop. And I've done a few inventories, so, I've been able to categorize the things that have happened in my life and made me who I am, my defects, the way I react, the way I think, the way I feel, And most of it stems from my childhood, with my formative years and the great teachers I had along the way. Life was pretty good up until I was about 9 years old. I had two brothers. It was just an all-American life. My folks got divorced, and I went and stayed with my mom and her boyfriend for a while. And I come to find out later my dad was in jail. And basically, it wasn't very long after that my mom dumped us off at my dad's house, I was about 9, 10 years old. Her new boyfriend just got a divorce. He didn't want kids around. She didn't want kids around. We were a nuisance. We were in the way. And so they left it up to us if we wanted to stay with them or go live with my dad, And at 9 and 10, my dad was cool. He played ball, I remember him coming out in the middle of winter to see us, And so he had this Messiah, Savior aspect to him. But he's an alcoholic. And he was very hurt and traumatized from his own experience and ordeal in his marriage, and he was kind of abusive verbally and emotionally, and I went through a lot of shit through that. He was caught up in his disease, and being in recovery, I'm able to understand that he did the best he could. But at the time, as a child, I experienced some things that I shouldn't have had to experience, and I was just coming from a point where I just wanted my dad. As any kid does, he wants the attention and time from his dad, and my dad's disease took him. And when I was around, it was funny, as kids, it was like the rats and the roaches when the lights come on, the headlights come in the driveway, everyone disappeared, except for me, because I just wanted to be with my dad, so I would take it, and eventually I got to the point where everything I did despite my father, and I knew I was hurt, but hurt people, and through my inability to accept my personal relationships and the responsibilities, I created a lot of damage to myself, and I made a lot of stupid decisions, and and I, in the end, I had some things I wanted to say I thought was kind of funny because I like some brevity to kind of like break the ice, but with things that happened today, I'm not going to go there. I just know that, I used until the wheels fell off, and I used some more, until I drove it into the ground, and I used some more, until I found myself in a helpless, hopeless place, and I used some more, and didn't have the willingness to live or the strength, the courage to take myself out, and I wound up here. It was either go to jail or come to Narcotics Anonymous. And, I know I went to jail a lot. And I know now that it was God just trying to show me there was give me opportunity after opportunity to show me there was a better way to live my life. I never really took those opportunities. And by the grace of God, the judge had the gavel in her hand. And all I heard was if I had a drug problem. And the addict mentality was like, "Here's my out." So I'm like, "Yeah, I do," because I know once it made that echoing sound, there was another echoing sound to follow, and it was the cage being closed, and that's where I was going again. So I had to jump through some hoops and all this stuff, and go to NA meetings. So again, that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And at first I was very reluctant, resistant. I was just going to kick back, check it out for a few minutes and find out the angles and the holes I could shoot and, get through this and do this and still do what I wanted to do. But, I went to one too many meetings. And I heard people telling my story, basically, And it got to the point where I was in that helpless, hopeless place again because I knew I didn't have any running left in me, and I wanted to run. And I begged my wife to just take the kids and just get. I almost cussed. I'm gonna try not to. I'm gonna try to keep it PG. I basically told her just to get the kids and just go. That I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I couldn't do this anymore, and you just need to get the hell out. And she didn't. And I ended up breaking down like an infant on my porch in a fetal position, just crying. I knew I was a broken man. And I just cried out to God for help, you know, and told me to go to the meetings. You know, God brought me to Narcotics Anonymous, and Narcotics Anonymous could bring me to God. And I've been here ever since. And I knew once I made that conscious decision, that moment of clarity, and I got honest with myself for the first time probably since I was a kid, that I could do this, and this was right where I needed to be. I mean, I was a smart kid, you know. I learned to read when I was 4. You know, when I was in kindergarten, they'd parade me around to the 6th graders and read all their texts and show me off, and they wanted to skip me through classes. I was just a little addict, man. I was addicted to Sesame Street, you know. I loved the accomplishment. I loved the sense of doing things and learning, and I wanted more and more. And, you know, when I made that decision to be a part of Narcotics Anonymous, I knew from an intellectual standpoint that they just didn't make enough of whatever it was. That using was anticlimactic. There was no resolve there for me. And, you know, that's why I say all the time that using for me isn't an option. Because I'm an addict, you know, and I'll order what's ever on the menu. You know what I mean? And if it's on the menu and I can find myself in a jam, well, then chances are I just might order it. And I'm not saying that I'll never will use, because I don't have that power to say that. I say that through this process, I've become a person where I just don't use dope. And dope isn't a part of my life, and thinking about using isn't a part of my life. Sometimes I get to the point where I think about checking out, and I'm working on getting that off the menu. Because that's where I go sometimes, you know. In this last month, there was a lot where I just felt tired. And I didn't feel that I couldn't do this. I just didn't want to do this anymore, you know. And I shut off for a while, and it's a scary spot. But, you know, in my early recovery, you know, I didn't know anything about Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't know anything about love. I didn't know anything about faith and hope and spiritual principles. And for the longest time, I used to say that I had to figure out how things didn't work before I figured out how they worked. And I caused a lot of harm to some people. And I got labeled like a Nazi and a prick and a cop. And I would say, you know, people would just follow the rules, you know. And a good friend of mine, Tim B., would always remind me that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. As a matter of fact, I talked to him on the way here, and that's what he told me. And I remember I had like 6 months clean, and I told someone after the meeting, I swear to God, if that effort tells me that one more time, I'm going to pick this chair up and hit him. And he was a big guy, and I'm like, he'd probably kill me, but he'd have to catch me. But I'm going to hit him with this chair if he tells me that one more time, you know. And the first time I worked the 6 step, I realized I knew where he was coming from, that I am right where I'm supposed to be. And you know, I've learned through this process that sometimes my life isn't my own business. And which is hard for someone who always has to know why and have to understand why and figure it out, you know, and not realizing, you know, the subtleness of this, that, you know, it's the same mentality I had before. You know, I don't need you guys, I'll figure this shit out. You know, I'm smart, I'll figure this shit out, I got it. And you know, that's the whole concept for me behind that first step, you know, the unmanageability. I need a manager. And sometimes I'm not even able to be the coach. Okay, just put me in, coach, let me play, but I need a manager, I need someone to help me, I need someone to keep me accountable, and sometimes I need someone just to help me, show me. And you know, I've really come to have a real deep appreciation of my sponsor these days, for what he's been trying to show me and tell me for the last 3 years, 3.5 years. It's finally starting to sink in. It is pretty simple. Everything is going to be all right. And when I let it, you know, but sometimes I just, no, that's not it. It's got to be something else, you know. And a few months ago, you know, another one of his things is, well, all you can do is love them, you know. Talking about them, the people that, you know, I let get in my head. And I was like, no, that's not it at all. You know. And he says, all right, well, you could hate them and be pissed at them for a while until it doesn't work, but then love them. I'm Because, I carry that with me. When I harbor ill will or negative feelings towards people, I feel that and carry that the most, And I learned that through my 8th and 9th steps. Most of all, we harmed ourselves. And when I was using, I would harm myself by killing myself, and I'd harm the people around me. Then I would harm myself more because I carried that with me, the guilt and the shame of what I did to the people that loved me the most. So it was like 2 for 1 all the time, And guilt and shame and remorse and all that stuff will take me out, and it gets me caught up in my head, and it's a place that I can't afford to be today. I've had a pretty eventful past so far in this recovery. I've been divorced, a new relationship, a new child, and it didn't work out so well. And jobless again. And it just, sometimes I just get tired, man. I just do, And I really don't want to get stuck on this, but that's just where I'm at. And I guess Tim was right. I guess it's just a good thing I need to share tonight. Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But the last couple weeks I've really started to have an appreciation for what I have in my life today. Again, and a sense of gratitude. And I do know from my experience that, there's always another door that opens whenever I go through stuff, And I know there's a reason for everything, and I might not see it, and I might not know it. But if I just keep doing the next right thing and stay in the moment, that it'll work itself out. I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm still kicking. No matter how hard I tried for how long to not be here, I'm still here. And, I talk about my kids a lot because they're a major part of my life, a major part of my stress, my pain. But it's teaching me how to love. It's teaching me what unconditional love is all about, And that's what I need the most. I believe my God, God as I understand him, to be loving and caring. I know all principles come from love. But, it's that unconditional love. And, for a while there, after the divorce, my kids really didn't understand what was going on. And I kept showing up, and they really didn't want me to be around or alive, and they were okay with vocalizing that. And, it took a lot for me to stay here and work through that, and let them go to God and be in His hands. And then, in that process of trying to be the Superman and save my ex-wife and my kids from everything and whatever after the divorce, I really wasn't present in this new relationship. And when that ended, I didn't get to see my youngest daughter for a couple of years. And that was a kicker, It just seems like there was never been any closure to this process. And, back in August, I started seeing my youngest daughter again. She's 5. And I get her, a few hours a week. And, sometimes it just seems like, it'll never heal. And I'll never get better, and I'll never accept, and I'll never get over what has happened, But I just keep trying to show up, and I get caught up, because I take that self-worth thing again, that I'm not a good dad. Woulda, I coulda, I shoulda, I'm screwing up another kid's life, and all that stuff that I want to beat myself up about, And all it does is take me out of the present again, you know, and it just seems like this vicious cycle sometimes. And you know, this last year with my son was a very trying one. You know, he's a teenager and he got in some trouble, and I thought I was at my wit's end back in October, and I was done with him. And he got in trouble for the last time. You know, and this was a stretch. I was talking with my sponsor 2 or 3 times a day for the longest time, and I was really looking for some place to send him. To the magical, mythical place where they could fix him and take care of him, and you know, basically he's out of my hair. And they didn't, you know. There is no such place, and I didn't send him away, and I didn't turn my back on him. I was highly disappointed in him, and I just tried to give it to God again and let him go through his process. And you know, he's got like 70 days clean now, and I'm proud as hell of him. And you know, it's kind of an awkward situation now because he comes to meetings with us. And it's real hard to differentiate that time sometimes between dad and fellow addict. You know, it was kind of funny, you know, when he first told me that he wanted to join. Dad, I want to join. And I'm like, all right, well, you know, you remember when you say you are, and, you know, just go to meetings. And he wanted to get a step working guy and work some steps, and he thought I'd be perfect as a sponsor. You know, and I told him, no, I'd be the exact opposite of perfect, you know. And, you know, a few weeks ago he got a sponsor, and then I just kind of treated him like any other newcomer. And he went to meetings and he listened and he watched, and you know, I'm very proud of him, and I'm very supportive of, you know, of him now. He's making some great decisions, and you know, I'll do whatever I can to help him. You know, my oldest daughter is pregnant. I really haven't dealt with that or addressed that too much. You know, I have a hard time because, you know, it took me till I was 31 years old to realize I didn't have a clue how to live my life. And she's a 19-year-old kid. And I'm holding her to the standard, you know, because she screwed up and she should have done this and she just should have listened. And I started sounding like my dad. You know, we didn't have any program, and I know she's scared, and I know she needs her dad the most, and you know, I'm just dealing with it as best as I can. You know, there was a time where I thought she was going to come live with us, her and her boyfriend, and I had a real hard time with it, man. And I was just totally selfish and self-centered about it, and hell no, they're not going to stay here. Hell no, I'm not raising a kid. Hell no, hell no, hell no. And it was just all about me, you know. And, you know, it's funny. You know, the first time I did an 8th and 9th step, I didn't even put my parents on there. You know, I put my dad and my stepmom. You know, I made amends with my mom and her boyfriend. I won't call him my stepdaddy, he's my mom's husband. But I'm very grateful that I was able to make amends with her because, you know, for the longest time, every Mother's Day, every birthday, and every chance I get, I would hurt that woman for what she did. And you know, my sponsor at the time, that was one of the things that really stuck out, one of the things we worked on, and I made amends with her, and we have a great relationship today because of this program, her and her husband. And they're great people, they're nice people. But I didn't put my dad and my stepmom on there, and I really didn't think twice about it until the second time around, when I guess I was able to be teachable and see a few things and experience some things firsthand with my son. The hell I put my father through. It doesn't matter if he was drinking and not present as much as I would have liked to in my relationship with him growing up. And I put that man through hell. And I know just because, you know, he wasn't the ideal father, he still loved me. And he still wanted the best for me. And he didn't deserve what I did to him. in an odd way, I'm glad that I was able to experience that with my son. And I think it's helped strengthen our relationship. and I made peace with my father, and I'll make amends when the time comes. I put him on my list this time around. And I don't hold anything against him. But it's just funny how life comes full circle sometimes. Where things are right in front of you for the longest time, you just can't see them, and then one day they're just boom, they're right there. And it's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, that was me, and that was part of what I did. If anything else, the dynamics of the family and being a father and a parent, just the lessons that I learned are just invaluable, because I always wanted to be a good father. I always wanted to be a good son, and I just didn't have a clue how to do it, But I knew I wanted to, and I knew I wanted to keep showing up. And it was like in the beginning of my recovery, it was like I'd have these debates with the voice in my head, just despite I could do this, because all my life growing up, my dad always told me, the whole "why can't you be like your brother?" The golden child, you piece of shit, why can't you be like him? Well, because he was a dork, he studied. The guy would stay up to 3 a.m. studying, And I didn't know this till later, but he got clean when he was 17, I didn't want to be nothing like him, So sometimes I still, I carry that sometimes, because I want to be Matt. I want to be the best Matt I can be. I want to be like anyone else. I want to be Matt. I want to be a good father, a good friend, a good son, a good sponsor, a good sponsor. I just want to be able to show up in every relationship and every aspect of my life. And, being a father, clean, and going through what I've gone through has really taught me about perseverance, man, I'll tell you. And just to keep coming back and get knocked down, just to get back up, man, dust yourself off and just keep going. And don't use no matter what. Go to meetings and your life will get better. It's that simple. It's like everything you learn in life, you need to know in life, you learn in kindergarten. It's like everything you need to know in Narcotics Anonymous, you learn in your first 30 days, 90 days. Now just apply it for the rest of your life. And a while back I was at a meeting, and it hit me, that after a while, after I was, sticking around and working steps and being of service, it's like I did have some values and some beliefs and something to stand for, that this whole process is just working on my presentation. Because I haven't been called a prick or Nazi in quite some time, And, steps have really taught me about empathy and compassion. That I'm sick and I need help, and I belong to a fellowship of people who are just like me. And just to be of love and service, that anybody at any given time is going through something, and then it's all self-centeredness that wants to make it about me. And it should always be, what can I do for you? That's the paradox of being an addict for me, that I know from my experience time and time again, when I get out of myself and do something for anybody else, that whatever I want comes to me tenfold. The less that I strive to get what I think I need, I get without trying when I give to others. I had an experience on my birthday, a couple months ago. It was like I shared it at a meeting. My phone rang like all day. I had like 37 calls, man. I was on top of the world, man. I'm loved. Everyone's great. I got all these friends. The next day, my phone didn't ring one time. I hated everybody. I'm serious, and I was twisted about it for the longest time. I'm like, I'm sick. I need help, man. What's that about? It's just like, what have you done for me lately? I just want to share about God a little bit. I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not a preacher. I have an understanding and relationship with God, and I think He really gets a bad rap in the room sometimes. My mom's father was a bishop in an organized religion. And I had experiences just like many of us growing up, going to church and with the rules and regulations and traditions and sitting and kneeling and singing. And one time I was very enamored with it, but I think I was more enamored with the power of love that I felt, because my grandfather was, and his wife, my grandmother also, were two of the most saintly people that I ever met in my life. They were just unreal. I didn't believe in a lot of what the church believed in, and it turned me off, and I see a lot of people, the second step is clearly about a higher power, and it's not a coffee mug. Don't tell newcomers, I don't care what it is. If it's a coffee mug, turn to it. No, bullshit,
That's right.
A higher power for me is anything outside of me that could help me. You are my higher power. Basic text is a higher power. Sponsor, the higher power. The room, the fellowship, coming to this place. Any other, a judge was my higher power one time. I can get with that, Second step clearly states that, I know there is a solution to my problem, and I know where to turn to get it. And the third step clearly talks about God. Not a coffee cup, not a higher power, but God, and I say this all the time. There's about 7 billion people on the planet. It doesn't mean there's 7 billion gods. There's one God. We just all understand him different, And I had a sponsor at one time tell me, he was very leery of people who knew what God's will was for them. Look, God isn't a fortune teller. He's not going to tell me who's going to win the Super Bowl and what the spread's going to be. He's not going to tell me what job to get, what lover to have, what car to buy. I know without a doubt what God expects of me, what God's will for me is. He wants me not to use. He wants me to be a love and service man. And he wants me to put God first. When I put God first, I have no problems, man. I'm accepting. I think is right up there with honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. I have to accept that I'm human and I'm flawed. And I know where to turn to for my sense of strength, and it's the love that I get from God. I pray to God. I get on my knees and pray to God. To me, it's a sign of respect. I had this newcomer one time. We were outside a meeting, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, can you pick that church up and throw it across the street?" And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. He says, "What? The church?" "Yeah, pick it up and throw it across the street." "Are you crazy?" And I said, "Well, God can." "I can't." That's a sign of respect. I have a fearful respect to that. I could be in that church when he throws it across the street, Yeah, loving and caring is my God. But you know what? I think of him like a good father should be, And I give him that fearful respect. Because time and time again, God has always done for me what I can't do for myself. He's always put people in my life to help me. Everywhere along my path, there was people and things in my life that God has sent to me. And I chose the other, And this is coming from a person who, just a month ago, I felt forsaken and abandoned because, I'm Almighty Matt, and in my moment of despair, I cried out, and I didn't get a response. I didn't hear, "Yeah, what do you want, Matt?" My phone didn't ring. "Hey, this is God. Can I help you?" And I expect that because don't you know, I'm an addict. I'm somebody today, and I'm sick, man. But those days when my phone rang 37 times, I learned a long time ago that I cannot discern if it's some jag running his mouth or if it's God speaking through that person. And it's safer and better for me to always assume it's God speaking through that person. Because if I assume that it's some jag running his mouth, I'm not going to listen to anybody. Because I know something and I know better, and who the hell are you? And my experience has shown me time and time again that God speaks through you people all the time. The principles before personalities, the message, not the messenger. I hear people rap meetings all the time. Every meeting I've been to, I can hear what God wants me to hear if I allow myself to hear it. If I have to shut my eyes and not look at the person sharing, that's cool. I don't care what he does outside the meeting. I don't have to hang with them and get with that. But I can listen to what they're saying because it could save my life at any given time. If I let someone, they can. That's God working through me and through other people. And, when I'm jammed up and jelly tight with God, I'm straight. And, a couple of weeks, I got a speeding ticket on the way to work. I got a call. I was on my way to a meeting, and someone called my company and said I was driving erratic and almost caused a 4-car pile up. And there was something else I did with the van. I can't remember. And yeah. Anyway, so I'm telling another recovering addict who I really appreciate and respect and love dearly about this, and she says, well, you might want to, give someone a call and talk about it. Nah, I'm straight. Nah. Yeah. So that's me, man. I know it all, but you know what? The more I come around and the longer I stay here, the more I truly understand how little I know, And humility is an ideal state for this recovering addict. An ideal state. When I'm at my humblest, I'm at my most receptive of what I need to recover. And I'm kind of glad. This is funny that I got up here and got to share. I feel a little better. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. And I know it's a job, and I know when I got this job, I had a child on the way. I didn't have a job, man. And I prayed just for an opportunity. God, let me get my foot in the door. And my work ethic, I got promoted in that job repeatedly. They gave me a van, they gave me a title, they gave me a lot, And I knew when I was in the frame of mind that I was working for God and to show appreciation and gratitude for this job that He had given me. I was good, And I know He'll do the same. It's just a job, and there's something out there. My sponsor told me today on the way here, you know what, you got skills, you'll find a job and you'll be all right. And I believe that. I have faith in someone in NA who wants to help me today. And I need people like that, esteemable people around me. Because I believe that I'm a piece of shit, and I'll piece of shit myself right out that door. And I can't afford to do that. There's too much at stake today, to tell you the truth. And I know once I process this, I'll be kind of excited about this new chapter in my life. Because, what I've been through and what I've gone through, and to still be here, one time I used to believe in reincarnation, and I would say, God, I must have been like Hitler at one time, But now I believe that God really has something great in store for me. He's got to. I mean, the relationships that I have, the meaningful relationships I have, and the people in my life make this journey worthwhile. You know what I'm saying? But there's got to be something, man. And I want to find out what it is, And I know as long as I remain grateful to be a member of Narcotics Anonymous and to be of service to this fellowship, to hug the newcomers, to reach out to newcomers, and to give what was so freely given to me. Our literature clearly states how obligated and responsible I am to give back. And it's selfish if I don't. And I know when I'm in a selfless state that I'm in a pretty good state. So I really appreciate you guys coming out at midnight. That's Derek's phone. That's all I got, thanks.